Good evening and welcome to the Pompey Politics Podcast.
I'm Ian Tiny Morris.
And I'm Simon Sainsbury.
Good afternoon, Simon, and welcome to our 105th show. I think it is now.
It is our 105th show and our penultimate show of 2021.
Indeed, before we go into our very own Christmas recess and potentially have massive parties that we shouldn't have, or maybe not.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing to be able to have a Schrodinger's party where you can say that you're not sure that the party exists, but you're certain that rules were followed at the party that you're not sure existed. But there we go.
Absolutely.
Who am I?
Absolutely.
I'm not Dominic Raab. So
you are not,
yes,
indeed.
I am not indeed. But at least we haven't got Matt Hancock telling us not to kiss people at Christmas parties.
No, it would be a little unwise. So this evening's show, Simon, obviously with a lot of news headlines lately about people crossing from the border in France across the English Channel and the very perilous crossing that involves. So, rather than rely on the tabloid headlines, we thought we'd invite along a couple of experts or people who are highly interested and engaged with the subject to give us some more frontline insight into the subject.
Indeed, yes. So we've got not one but two experts to talk to us today, and to give us some decent insight, as you say, beyond the headlines, and to tell us actually what their experiences are and what's happening. So we hope that we might be able to squeeze in some talk about by-elections. But let's get in our esteemed guests first, shall we?
Excellent.
So this is where I pressed the wrong button. So we have Miranda and Polly joining us. Good evening, both. Hello. Can you hear us okay? My apologies for the technical issue, my end there, Miranda. Sorry about that. Can you hear me okay? I think I can hear you. We can hear you. Are you? I've unmuted this end, so you should be all right to speak. Are you okay there, Polly? You've frozen. Miranda, are you okay to?
Hi there.
Introduce yourself. Hello. Yes, we have got you. Hello. Welcome. Fantastic. So Polly's screen is frozen. So while we allow Polly to battle with the technology a bit, Miranda, would you like to introduce yourself and what your involvement is with this subject?
Yes, I've been working in social care for the past 5 years. My interest in the more vulnerable groups that we have was sparked when I left IBM. I've worked with different groups of people. I've worked in addiction, I've worked in homelessness, and latterly in the asylum seekers who come to the UK. It spiked my interest because I have my own children who also have their own children now, and I was thinking about the sort of like the pain their parents must have felt, and of course they must have felt about having to come to a country that they wouldn't have contact with family or with friends, and they'd be totally alone at a young age. And that sparked my interest because I was thinking if it had ever happened to my children or my children's children, I would want people to be there looking after the young person, my child, the person that I couldn't look after.
Okay, that's lovely. Thank you. Thank you very much. And hopefully, Polly has rescued her technology.
Sorry, guys. I'm on.
No worries, Polly. Would you like to introduce yourself and tell us what your interest in this subject and how you became involved?
Hi guys, so yeah, I'm Polly. I have worked in this sector for about nearly 3 years now. So I currently am a support worker working directly with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. But I've worked in a local authority position, you know, in the same sector for the British Red Cross refugee programme in Portsmouth, and also Care for Calais, which is a charity that helps those in, oh, don't know who that banging is, sorry, Care for Calais. They help in Calais, in other countries as well, and also in the UK as well.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, so apologies for the slight technical issues and a bit of the noise there. I'm not sure where that is, but we're gonna carry on. So the first question I'd like to ask is to Polly. So can you share what life is like for those people who are in and around Calais trying to make this crossing? What's it like for them on the ground?
So the life that they lead is pretty hideous out in Calais. I've always been really interested in it, and I finally got the chance to go out there to work for Care for Calais. And yeah, so these young people, they are living under like tarpaulins, so they don't have tents, because when they do have tents, the French police just come and basically like cut them up and just dispose of them. So they might, if they're lucky, have like a bit of tarpaulin that they'll just kind of cover themselves with, like from a tree type thing. And yeah, it's absolutely dire. They are just hoping that they can make that crossing, but I think it is becoming increasingly difficult. So I think some of them have just resigned the fact that they will just live kind of on the streets in Calais. Yeah, so charities feed them, charities clothe them. They have no, you know, they can't work, they can't do anything for themselves. And yeah, it's really unfortunate. It's not safety out there at all.
Because obviously there was infamously the big camp a few years ago. So the French authorities kind of tried to clear that almost as a deterrent, but it sounds like all that did was just make the conditions worse for the people that are on the border.
Yeah, so there's now like pockets of different camps. So you've got a specifically Eritrean site, so only Eritrean people live there. They've got babies there. It's absolutely, you know, no baby should be living in those sort of circumstances. And then you've got different camps, so some for Sudanese, and then and sometimes like those from Iraq, Iran, and Afghanistan will live with them, but sometimes there's conflict. So there's pockets across Calais of different camps, but the numbers are significantly less than when the jungle was there. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Miranda, was there anything you wanted to add to that one at all?
No, I think Polly's covered it all. Thank you.
Thank you. Ian, so did you have the next question?
Yeah. So both of you have spoken about working with unaccompanied minors. So if I can put this to Miranda first, so can you just tell us a little bit about the unaccompanied minors that are arriving and how they've come to be here, and you know, maybe give us a bit of insight into their story?
So generally people are fleeing from a life-threatening situation. I've worked with a number of young people who've had to leave the country that they were born in and their families because their father might have been arrested or taken away by the government, by the army and that sort of thing. They are male and they don't want to be pulled into fighting for something that they don't believe in. So they want a better better chance at having a future by coming to the UK, where they hope to be safe. I think we tend to forget how much trauma that whole decision leaves the young people with. But I think it's very easy for us to say, are they fleeing the country? When you hear some of the stories that I've certainly heard, and I know that Polly has heard, about why they've left. For example, one young person was telling me he watched his father killed by somebody from the army. The animals were taken away. He hid and he flew to the UK. But that journey actually took him 3 years. It wasn't sort of like we'll get to France and then we get across the water. There's a lot of living and there's a lot of waiting that they have to do to make that journey. And they come here, a lot of them very, very traumatized, and they don't have the ability when they first get here to be able to express that. They need to feel that they are safe. They need to feel that they are secure before they can even sort of like approach talking about it. And it's still something they'll often hold very close to them. It's fleeing from a life threats that are coming their way, and it's also fleeing from what might end up being their future.
Holly, would you like to add anything to that?
Yeah. Sorry, can you tell me the exact question again, just so I can?
It was really just to give us an insight into particularly the unaccompanied minors who are making the crossing on their own. You know, what their life is like. You know, just give us an insight into their story.
Yeah, you know, it hasn't been easy for them at all. Their resilience is, you just could not believe it, that they are the most amazing young people. The things that they have seen and witnessed, I wouldn't even wish on my worst enemy. And the journey itself is completely traumatic. So what they've seen back in their home country is significantly horrendous, but the journeys they make, so they'll kind of, if you're coming from Africa, you'll go up into Libya, and Libya is completely lawless. A lot of them will spend time in prison there, and the body map of scars on their bodies from being, what's the word?
Tortured.
Basically terrorized with like electrical instruments, or they're beaten so badly. Their body map of scars is absolutely hideous. They just look like dot to dot with all the lesions and the scars on their bodies of how they're treated. So it's not an easy journey for them at all. And I just love working in this sector because I want to make a difference for those that have made that deadly crossing. The Libya to Italy one is around 3 days. So actually the British one, they just see as like, oh, final slog, if we make it, great. If we don't, we've tried. And I would say that sorry, I'm just rambling on, but that's me.
No.
They are, on the most part, very religious, like of Muslim religion. So they feel that very much like Allah has provided them with like the ability to get here, and they all pray to Allah to kind of give them safe a safe journey. But yeah, so not easy whatsoever. They haven't just come for free. They're literally fleeing the most awful things you could, watching their mums being raped, their fathers being killed. I had one who his whole family were lined up and his dad was beheaded in front of him, and then other family members, and he managed to run away. And when you run away there and then. There's no going home to get, well, whatever they might have. Once you're in the situation, you then flee. So sometimes you don't even get the ability to say goodbye. And I had one boy the other day tell me he doesn't even remember what his mum looks like, because they don't have any photos, they don't have anything like that. So he doesn't even know what her face looked like anymore. And I think that's hideous.
It's a very, very tragic story, isn't it?
Really is.
Yeah, and and I guess that kind of speaks to what Miranda was saying earlier on about, about if that was one of your kids, you'd want to know that there was someone actually that was going to be helping them. And it's an unimaginable mental and physical scars that you're talking about. I don't, it's that would be a perilous journey for a grown adult, but for a child to do that and to feel that they have to run from that's it's not something that even kind of I think we can kind of compute and understand the sort of terror involved. So so Polly, so we're seeing so many people sadly in this desperate situation, and they're risking their lives. And you say that the UK, the France to UK crossing is kind of like the perhaps kind of the last bit, the kind of bit. What is it that's what is it that's setting the UK as their destination? If they made that perilous 2-3 year journey across Europe, what's the motivation for that?
Well, so as I said before, in Calais, France is a safe country. We all know that, but they are not allowed the ability to live there in kind of normal situation. They don't have a roof over their heads, so they're making that journey to the UK because they feel that they will be given safety here. Some of the young people I've worked with do have family members here. It might be like an uncle or a brother, and the local authority will provide DNA tests because they want them to be with the families. If they've got a brother or a sibling here, that type of thing. And I guess back in the day, this was the great place to come to. They just see it and think, oh, we'll be given a safe life there. We can get a job, we can earn money, we can have a safe life. And some of the places they've been to on the way, Malta, for example, they're also put in prison there. So even in safe countries, they're not treated like humans. They're treated like a bit of dirt on your shoe. And so I guess England's like the final place, isn't it? And I guess where we're an island, it's kind of like, oh, let's just try and make the crossing, and then that's the final destination, isn't it? That's the final destination. But the thing is, so many millions have sought refuge in Germany and other countries. We take such a minority. I don't know the figures, but we take such a significantly less amount than other European countries. And it's just I've forgotten what the question was because I was just going on. Why are they coming in the boat? Yeah, because they want safety. They just want to live a normal life, like we have been so lucky to be born in this country, and that's what I say to them. I said it was only luck that allowed me to be born in this country. Unfortunately, you weren't, and you've had to go through these things to because of where you were born. So that's why I feel that they're making the crossing.
Okay, thank you. Miranda, did you have anything to add on that one at all?
I think it is. I think it's about them being allowed to live a life, and it's about them being allowed to have a future and being allowed to plan for that future. And for them, this is safe. This is safety. And they really, really need to feel it. They've come over at a young age. They generally don't have much communication, if any, with their families or their parents. But we can help them to feel safe and supported when they get here.
So is it kind of bearing in mind the places where they're coming from? Are they really kind of searching for somewhere that's safe and stable, where they feel they can build a quote unquote a normal life that isn't threatened by the sorts of tragedy and chaos that they're experiencing? Is that kind of the draw, if that's not really an awful word to use, but is that what they're looking for? Is that security, that safety?
Of course, because currently where they're living back in their home countries, like, so for Iraq and Iran, for example, there's maybe not so much now, but they've grown up like dodging bombs literally and being recruited into ISIS. And obviously if you're recruited in but you say no, you can't just say no and they'll, you know, I'm sorry, you're not coming in, you'll be killed. So you literally cannot live the way that we live here in the UK. And in Sudan, the Janjaweed, which is like a tribe, because it's very tribal in Sudan, they will just kill you. Life is so cheap out there. They will kill you for literally no reason. So most of the young people that we deal with, a close sibling or parent may have been killed. So that's why they're fleeing. It must be so strange when they get here and it's safe. Because as well on the journey we've come across a lot of unsafe things. So yeah, I think they find it strange when they finally get here and their sleep patterns are, well, they don't have a sleep pattern, because normally when you're doing the journey, you sleep during the day and then you travel at night to kind of go undetected. Not so much when they get to France, because in Calais they're living there for a bit before they're trying to make those crossings. But yes.
So forgive me if this next question is slightly provocative, but I think it's important to ask it because it is one that gets asked often, which is many people kind of say, well, I get that they're fleeing from peril in North Africa or Afghanistan or in certain African states, but they say, well, once you got to France, you know, France is a safe country, so why not claim asylum there? Well,
because they're not allowed to. When I was speaking to a refugee over there, they said it was very much like they will pick and choose who is allowed to claim asylum. I don't think anyone would be living on the street if they didn't have to. So they do ask to claim asylum there, but unfortunately they're not given that ability. I do believe that some have settled. A lot of my young people speak to their friends that are still in France, and some have settled and claimed asylum there, but unfortunately others aren't able to. So that's why they're, like Britain's the last place on the, the last stop, isn't it? So I guess they can only hope that they'll be able to claim asylum here.
Thank you, Polly. Miranda, any perspective on that?
No, I think it is just about being able to claim asylum and being supported to be able to do so. And I don't know that happen. I know that doesn't happen over in France, but hopefully, certainly the young people that I've worked with are all supported to be able to make that claim. And I don't know that they have that sort of system or that care wrapped around them in the same sort of way, which doesn't afford them the security and the safety that they need because of their traumatic past.
Thank you.
Okay, so so again, the next question, and I'll direct this first to Miranda. So the UK press, it's quite easy to see in some of them. They seem to find very easy copy in demonising these sorts of people making these perilous journeys as either benefit scroungers or as would-be terrorists. What's the reality in the contributions that they make to society, and actually the what their experience is? Because the reality is, what you read in the headline of a Daily Mail. What's the reality?
The reality is certainly the young people that I work with have a real thirst to learn. They want more knowledge and they want to go further than that. I've worked with a young person, and I know that Polly works with young people who've been able to do that, who've gone on to university, which will then, one of them I hear wants to be a doctor and will then give back to the society and the community that they're living in. I had a great opportunity of seeing young people both volunteer and work at Victoria's for 3 days. I have never met people of that sort of age with such an amazing work ethic, even though they were being told at sort of like 8:30, it's okay guys, you can go. They were like, no, we said till 9 o'clock, we stay until 9 o'clock, and they did it for 3 days. I think they benefit our society. They want to develop themselves so that they can contribute and so that they can give back. We're talking about an awful lot of young people who have never had an education. Their future isn't as our young people, it isn't laid out in that way. We have young people who don't know how to write when they get here. They don't know. The mistake is often made that if something is written in their language, they'll be able to read it, but that isn't the reality. They can't read. You know, you find different ways of helping them to learn, even going down to the beach and writing or drawing pictures in the sand and then putting words next to it to make them feel involved, that sort of thing. And that, for me, it gives me an awful lot. It gives me new ways to learn about these young people and to work with these young people. I think these young people have an amazing work ethic. All of the young people that I work with want to work. All of the young people that I know hope they get asylum because they want to go to work. They want to give back. They don't want to work cash in hand. They want a proper job. They want to give back to a society that can give them the opportunity to have a future. And that, for me, is really important that we know that. And we sort of saw that highlighted, didn't we, with the whole petrol thing. You know, we keep sending people back and we keep sending people back. And yet the very people that we keep sending back are the people that we actually need, because we seem to be in a society where a lot of people pick and choose what they will and they won't do because they are not prepared to do the hard slog day in, day out.
Yeah.
I guess it requires a certain level of determination and fortitude to make that crossing, or you know, to make that entire journey. Even if you didn't have it at the start, you must surely develop it through the course of it, along with obviously probably all the trauma and stuff. But it's not exactly an easy choice, is it? Even if choice is the wrong word, it's, you know, to think that's that's because it's easy to do, and you know, they come here for well, it's not exactly an easy journey at all, is it?
No,
Polly,
but I
did you have
think
anything
that
on that
is,
one? Oh, sorry, Miranda,
I
go on.
think that is how they're sort of like publicised as people who've, you know, had a short journey over here and everything's fine and they just want to get some money and, you know, live whatever sort of life they're going to live. But nobody ever looks further than that about what that journey actually entailed. They didn't get on an aeroplane and fly over here.
No.
And I don't often see that publicised. I do see, these immigrants have got here, but not about the traumatic journey they've suffered on the way here. They are human beings.
Indeed, and I think that's an underlying tragedy, isn't it? When people are talking about numbers and they're talking about, you know, statistics, these are human beings that we're talking about. These are people. These are you know, as you both talked about, some of them are children, and that's horrific. Polly, anything to add on that?
Yeah, so basically, like Miranda said, and she said it really well, it's just they have got such an amazing work ethic. Back home, yeah, they might not have been educated, but they worked on their dad's farm. They worked in the local market. I've had some that were basically slaves in like gold mines in Chad. So, you know, they literally had to work to survive. If they didn't work, there might not be food on the table that day. So unlike, I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but British kids, you know, similar ages, it's all a bit, life's so tough, you know, I've got to work 8 hours at Matalan this weekend or whatever, you know. Whereas these young people, they're so hungry to learn or to, you know, to when they can get the ability to work. Honestly, seeing them on their, you know, first days going to a job, it's the most.
Oh, we've lost Polly. But yes, it sounds like that's a fulfilling and amazing thing to see when you see them get to a position where you know someone is able to offer them a job, or they've got some stability in education.
Exactly, and more than that, a number of young people that I've worked with have worked at both the Victoria's Festival and the We Shine Festival, and those who don't have leave to remain have volunteered at those, and so they are giving back to their own community and becoming part of.
And that's one of the real frustrations, isn't it? Is it's my understanding that while an asylum application is being processed, effectively, even with the greatest work ethic in the world, the person isn't allowed to work until they get leave to remain.
No, that's absolutely correct. So we have a number of people in our country who would like to be able to go out and work, but that's not something they can do. And it's probably something, so whereas a lot of our children have grown up being educated and going to school, they've been going to work, and suddenly that bit of normality for them is ripped away when they get here because they can't even go out to work.
And just in... I'm presuming we've still lost Polly.
Polly's
I'm
just come
back.
back.
Oh, that's marvelous. So yeah, we're getting that very strong picture of work ethic, and if I can't work, then I'll volunteer. So that's again that is it paints such a different picture, and I think you touched on it, Miranda, to what we see in the mainstream press.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
obviously, one of the things that we've seen, that a change that I think has happened over recent months, and I think, Polly, when we were talking about the show in advance, you said, well, the technology that effectively where has quote unquote improved, that means that people sort of trying to smuggle their way through the Channel Tunnel has decreased, forcing more people onto boats, and we've seen the tragic consequences of that. So my question is, what would you like the UK government to do to stop the traffickers exploiting these people in, using dangerous tiny boats to make the crossing?
That's for me, isn't it?
Is
yeah.
you?
Yeah. Do you know what? I was thinking about this before, Ian, and I really don't know the answer. And I don't know that my answer is the right answer, so I don't know how to answer this one. The thing is, if they don't come across on the boat, they're never going to come here. So for them, it is that, make that life or death journey. Otherwise, potentially they're going to get to Calais, and then they're going to live in Calais on the streets for the rest of their lives, or Caen, wherever they live in the north of France. So I don't know that. Can we generally chat about that one, because I don't know what the right answer is. Miranda, what are your thoughts?
I like you. I'm not completely sure, but I think what we need to remember when all those decisions are being made is, again, that they are human beings with feelings and emotions and things that have actually happened, and we need to bear that in mind, because the journeys they are now taking and the risks they are now taking are too high. The price is too high.
And yeah, but
sorry, I have seen suggestions that there have been suggestions that there should be an immigration processing point on the French side of the channel, where UK border officials effectively would make a preliminary assessment, and then effectively, if somebody passed that kind of level, then they would effectively we would use more suitable transport to transport them from France to the UK. There's been obviously sorry.
So I definitely feel that more young people should be given safe passage. So I've worked with over probably around 250 young refugees, and I've only had one that has come here via safe passage, not as an illegal entrant. So that one young person, we flew into Greece, and we picked him and his younger brother up on a flight from Greece. It's under the Dubs Amendment. It's one way of safe passage as a child refugee, but that is only one young person, and the rest of them are making these deadly crossings. And like I said to you before, Ian, they used to all get on the back of lorries. You know, that's how they would. Most of the ones that me and Miranda see have come on a lorry because they are coming into the Portsmouth port, so they'll be picked up at the Portsmouth port. But the ones in the boats, that's, you know, they're going from Calais to Dover, that type of route. I feel potentially those in Calais, we should be saying, right, we'll take X amount of you and you can come and live in the UK, to prevent them from having to make these deadly crossings. And this isn't based on fact because I don't know, but a lot of the young people or the families, whoever you see on those boats, they are normally like Iraqi, Iranian, or Afghani. You know, they're not from Sudan, so I think they have more money behind them. Those from Africa would not be able to pay those prices to the truckers. So it's the families back home that are paying the smugglers. But I will say as well, on the journeys, the smugglers and the traffickers treat the young people absolutely hideously. Their hands are bound, they're not allowed to speak, their eyes are blindfolded. So yeah, they're treated like, you know, literally, like I said before, like dirt on your shoe, and that's by the people that are paid. They've been paid significant amount of money to transport them. Yeah, so I guess the answer to the question for me is I would like more young people to be given safe passage, to allow them to, you know, not have to go on these perilous journeys where potentially they will lose their life.
Miranda, anything to add to that?
No, I think it's absolutely right. I do believe that the only way that we're going to stop illegal crossings is giving people some opportunities to safely come to this country, and therefore reducing the trauma and the loss of life that we're seeing at the moment.
And also, sorry, just to add to that, I do believe, I don't know because I just don't, that when I was in Calais, they were saying about they're trying to make it illegal to make that crossing. So if you make that crossing and you survive the journey, then on entry into the UK, you'll be put into prison. So I think there's a bill going through at the minute. So maybe that's why they've been ramped up, why so many people are trying to rush to rush to come here. I don't know if that's part of it, or maybe because of the increased like border patrols in France, although I know the UK is saying that they're not really doing their job, but maybe they feel like it's now or never, potentially.
Desperate people are driven to do desperate things, aren't they?
Exactly. But I don't think that's going to solve the problem either, because, you know, life in prison in the UK is probably a lot better than, you know, life in prison in Libya, or working in a gold mine, or, you know, watching your father being killed in Sudan. So actually, I think they'd still be happy to make the crossing. So it's not going to make it any better, is it?
Well, yeah, as you say, you know, 4 safe walls with food and a safe place to sleep is still going to be a marked improvement on their previous experience, isn't it? Yeah, I guess kind of it seems like if we don't want there to be a market for unsafe and exploitative journeys, then there needs to be a workable, safe way to do it. And as you know, Ian said, that seems to be something that has been floated about. And I think because back when there was the established the jungle camp, was that Sangat in Calais? Wasn't there? I think there was UK Border Force officials there actually processing claims. So it's not like these things are unknown ideas. It just seems for some reason we're not exploring them.
I wonder if maybe because they feel that, okay, we'll let example 1,000 through, then 1,000 more come. But maybe, I don't know, do we say, right, guys, we'll let 1,000 in, but that is it? To maybe as a preventative, you know, so that they know further back, actually don't come, the doors, well, you can't do that either, can you?
No, and it is, these are, and this is and I think Simon touched on it earlier, and this is where it becomes such a very difficult subject to discuss, because there is an element of behind every number is a person, and so, you know, whichever way, wherever you look to set the line, and political opinion has the line set in different places, there is an element, there will always be somebody who will fall the wrong side of that line, who, when you look at them as an individual and their experience, you know, they are perhaps, and I hate to use the word, more deserving of asylum, but you know, their story, that, you know, their experience means that you should be taking them. It's incredibly complex challenge.
And also, I feel, sorry, it's a bit random, me, but I don't even know what I was going to say. Sorry. Working for the charity Care for Calais, when I collect stuff and then have distributed it in France. During the time of the Afghanistan crisis, oh my, I got emails, like 600 emails a week. Can I help? You know, can I do this? Can I do that? And then before the Afghani crisis, I used to get like 1 email a month, maybe 2 emails a month. So people aren't aware of it. And now that we're not, you know, we haven't got journalists in Afghanistan reporting back, it's like we've all just forgotten. So it's really difficult. But these young people, I think, when they do arrive safely, it's about allowing them to feel safe and to be at one in society. They're still quite segregated. So that's why me and Miranda work really hard to try and, you know, embrace them into like, you know, what we do as a British society, but also allowing them to explore their cultures with us as well. So that was so random, but I just thought I'd throw it in there.
No, that's fine. I mean, it segues beautifully into, because our next question, which I was going to go, I'll stay with you first and then go to Miranda. Sorry, just to switch it up a little bit. But so, Polly, if you know, you're saying that before you had emails of help, if people want to help, who should they contact? What organizations should they be in touch with?
Okay, so in our local area, we've got the Rural Refugee Network, who is hosted by Nadia Parts, who is absolutely amazing and does some fantastic work with families, young asylum seekers. So there's the British Red Cross. They offer some amazing services to our unaccompanied minors. And also Portsmouth City of Sanctuary are absolutely famous. They're fantastic. There's a guy called Malcolm Little. Is it Malcolm? He used to be at the Red Cross as well. And they do some fantastic work about showing people, you know, explaining to people about the plight of refugees and how we can help. And they offer safe spaces around our city where vulnerable people can go and for sanctuary and for safety.
Thank you, Polly. Miranda, any more to add to that of who people should contact if they want to help?
Do you know, I also sort of like this is the homeless day service that you house in Milton Road, and there are a number of asylum seekers there currently who would benefit from any sort of like help and support they could get, really, as well. So it's kind of like they've been integrated into that part of our society, into the homelessness, and now we need to find a way of helping them move on.
Fantastic, thank you very much. And we'll include those when we do the upload for the podcast later on. So we'll make sure all of those are in there, and we'll add them to the recording of this live stream. So thank you so much.
Yeah, so as we come to the end of this segment, we'd like to thank you both very much for your contribution. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I I would just say, if you are ever out and about and someone says that they originate from any of the countries that we've said about, obviously don't go straight, well, oh, you're seeking asylum, but it's just about, just making them feel included in society. Like, they're still so segregated, and it's, so although they've come to live in this country, they're still like in their own bubble in a way. So if you do ever come across someone that has sought asylum, just give them the time of day, make them feel human, speak to them, talk to them, let them improve their English with you. And, rightly or wrongly, if people don't agree with the crossings, or they do, whatever your thoughts are, some people have made that crossing, they've made it. Just let them have the ability to live safely and securely when they get here. If you don't agree with it, that's fine, but they are here, those ones that have arrived. So treat them with some respect. They're human beings, and what they've been through is, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy. The things I've heard and seen, witnessed, is disgusting. Honestly, it's the most horrific things you will ever hear. So let's just let them, have the ability to live a happy and safe life. If they've been lucky enough to make that crossing.
Thank you, Polly. That's beautifully put.
Thank you very much. Well, thank you very much, both. That's been a very informative segment, and we had a comment that from one of our listeners saying that they found that truly informative. So thank you both for opening our eyes to that, for the truth of that experience. And as I say, we'll share the details of how people can help with the upload later on. Thank you very much, both.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so
A couple of very inspiring guests, Simon.
Indeed. And as is our method, sometimes we when people get bored of listening to us, they get to hear from people that know what they're talking about, have experienced some truly difficult situations, and can actually speak to them with authority, rather than the easy headlines. So good to hear from them both. Thank you very much to Polly and Miranda for agreeing to come on and sharing those details with us.
So our last little bit is we had a by-election on Thursday.
Yes, well, we did, and by-elections are quite the thing, aren't they? Really, because yes, on December the 2nd, we saw the 5th parliamentary by-election of the year, which is the 6th due to take place in North Shropshire on December the 16th. But Thursday's by-election, brought about by the sad death of Conservative MP James Brokenshire, saw a comfortable win for the Conservatives, but with a much reduced majority. So their majority was down by 13.5 percentage points of the vote share. But can they remain comfortable, quote unquote comfortable, with as the votes get cast in North Shropshire?
Yes, because haven't Team Orange and Red done a little bit of a smoky room agreement?
Well, there certainly seems to be some sort of tacit informal agreement, because the although the Conservative vote dropped from 64.5% in 2019 to dropped to 51.5% this time round. The Labour vote in 2019 was 23.5% of the vote share, and actually rose to 30.9%. So, although sadly for those that were supporting them, still nowhere near close. But the Lib Dems didn't really put any effort behind their campaign there, and saw their vote share drop from 8.3 to 6.6. So, does that reflects an active decision not to pursue the campaign, and they indeed lost their deposit.
Well, and for me, this is a funny old election, and people have responded to it very differently, because there's an element of if we look at Labour 31%, gained 7%, but actually they only bounced back to their 2017 levels. So they had 31% in 2017. obviously had a nightmare in 19 and lost 7%, and they've bounced that back. And obviously, when you get a by-election, you get all sorts of weird and wonderful characters come out of the woodwork. And I think there's the ghost of UKIP, which is it UK Reform?
So the Reform UK, which were formerly the Brexit Party. So in a feat of irony, Nigel Farage's splinter group from UKIP, that then changed its name, took nearly 4% of the vote. UKIP, their vote share in this by-election was under 1%, which is a massive drop compared to their heady days in 2015, where they had 18% of the vote. So
I guess for me,
weirdness.
Lots of weirdness, but ultimately very low turnout. So I think 36%, something along those lines. Which we know sometimes turnouts in by-elections are low. But there's an element of, if we look at it in its entirety, it was still a solid Conservative hold. And I know on one of the political forums, you got a little bit of heat for suggesting that it was quote unquote comfortable. Well, for me, when you get more than everybody else added together, and you've got a 20% winning margin, it wasn't a nail biter, was it?
No. So I mean, people can disagree with my choice of the word comfortable, but I wouldn't describe it as under threat. So I guess the question kind of going forward, and the circumstances of this by-election are obviously quite different to the circumstances of the upcoming election on December the 16th. In North Shropshire, which is brought about by Owen Paterson standing down after being found to have breached parliamentary rules with regarding paid advocacy. So that's a different kind of kettle of fish, isn't it? Really, as opposed to a by-election brought about by the sad death of an MP.
So I think if we've got the difference between untimely death, which is sad, and there's questions, of course, in terms of those circumstances as to what is and isn't appropriate, and we can maybe touch on that, is not the same as somebody who is caught with their entire upper body in the cookie jar, have shamelessly refused to resign. The shamefulness is then doubled down by trying to change the rules to allow them an appeal, which is then eventually, when that all just looks too tawdry and unpleasant for everybody, Mr. Patterson then falls on his sword. So, ultimately, anybody that wants to bring their sleaze trumpet, or perhaps even a sleaze euphonium, to the North Shropshire by-election, you might even have a marching brass band of...
Well, yeah. I mean, by-elections, as you said, are a bit of a different animal to general elections. By the way, you've seen, from 2001 to 2019, the Bexley constituency, the average turnout was 68.4%. On Thursday, it was 33.5%. So
half.
It kind of tells you, just over half, isn't it? But North Shropshire, different kettle of fish, or a different kettle of onions, as one of my friends would say. So their average turnout, 2001 to 2019, was 65.8%, so not a huge amount in it. But the by-election on the 16th. So interestingly, here we talked about, used the phrase quote unquote backroom deals. The Lib Dems had a poll of postal ballots, which the North Shropshire Star reported on, saying that actually put the Lib Dems within 10 percentage points of the Conservatives in that. So I forget which of the Hitchens brothers it is that says that polls are only released to manipulate voters. I may be paraphrasing there massively, but there's only one reason why a party releases an internal poll, and that's obviously because they feel that it's going to be favouring them. But having said that, in Cheshire and Amersham, a similar poll had the Lib Dems less than 24% percentage points behind the Conservatives, and they actually went on to win that by-election. So who knows?
So do we know if Team Red are just going to stick a name on a ballot paper and encourage all of their folk to vote for you?
Well, it seems that actually that was the other interesting thing, is that I think that's kind of what seems to be happening, is that they're not fighting hard to be able to win it. But from a point of view of the point that you make there about one political party can say to their supporters, "Hey, look, we're not going to, we're going to put a name on a piece of ballot paper, but we're not going to." We're not actually going to really do any active campaigning. Please, can you lend your vote to Party X? And that's kind of the theory behind a possible progressive alliance, as it's called. The trouble with that, and indeed, as former Lib Dem leader Tim Farron wrote in the New Statesman back in June, is that voters don't belong to political parties, and indeed, they won't quite rightly do what actually political parties tell them to do, and actually. There's many examples where, using the Lib Dem situation, there are many people that would, if they weren't going to vote Lib Dem because the Lib Dem didn't stand, rather than actually give their vote to, as an example, to the Labour Party, or not vote at all, they might actually vote Tory. So if the idea of a quote unquote progressive alliance is to field whichever is the most combative candidate out sitting Conservative, that's not really very useful strategy to employ. So rather than stepping aside, is it more useful to actually have a name on a ballot paper, but not to spend any money? Because in Bexley, the £500 deposit that Lib Dems have lost is less than the cost of a round of leaflets for the constituency. If you knew you were not in a million miles of winning it, and actually all they've done is, lost the vote share by 2 percentage points. So there's a logic of, rather than just not standing, of agreeing that whoever is the most combative and stands the most chance, it gets very personal when you start talking about a similar debate about our constituencies closer to home, like Portsmouth South, for example. Can you really argue that a sitting Labour MP is likely to be ousted by a Lib Dem? Probably not.
I guess Portsmouth South's that conundrum, isn't it? Which is that, in the last 20 odd years, it's been all three colours.
Yes, it moves backwards and forwards, but if your argument is trying to say we are the best, not the person that's actually the current MP, but us, we're the best people to make sure that the Conservatives don't win, that kind of doesn't pass the logic test to a lot of people. And
I think that's the case, isn't it? Is that, if we look at Portsmouth South, at the end of the day, if you want Stephen Morgan, his personal brand is very strong. He romped home last time, but the only party that is likely to depose Stephen Morgan is the Conservative Party. So you kind of look at that and say, well, is the Progressive Alliance there to say, you're going to stand a candidate as the Lib Dems, to make sure that people, as you say, that you don't separate into Kurds and Way and some vote Conservative and some vote for Stephen. Fascinating, and we will obviously cover. Well, we'll be off air by the time the result comes through, so we'll have to pick that one up as a New Year's present.
Yeah, unless it's that much of a shock that we do a special episode, but I don't know. It depends how much I have to bribe you if that happens. We shall see. But that's the conundrum that's facing all of the progressive parties. Aside from defining what progressive means, would be okay. How does that work? And how can we make progress?
So on that bombshell, we are done. You've been listening to the Pompey Politics Podcast. I've been Ian Tiny Morris.
And our guests have been Polly and Miranda, and I've been Simon Sainsbury.